What really drives a nation forward? When we talk development, our minds often jump to uh, complex economics, trade deals, tech breakthroughs. But what if the real key, the absolute bedrock, is something much simpler, almost hiding in plain sight? We're diving deep today into a perspective that asks us to look, well, closer, to think about the very ground level stuff that progress needs to be built on. And our focus for this deep dive is Angola, specifically its socioeconomic development. The ideas we're exploring come from an Angolan jurist, Antonio Andrade Fernandes Bernardo. He's actually writing a book right now. It's called Sina QUAN NON, which, means something absolutely essential. The full title digs into the historical and philosophical roots of what he sees as the indispensable foundation for development. So our mission today is to unpack his core argument. It's surprisingly fundamental, all about something he calls PO.PE. See as ACTE. We're going to explore why he thinks this is the sine qua non for Angola's future.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, like you said, is that it's a concept that often just gets, well, overshadowed or maybe dismissed as just logistics. But the argument here is that it's absolutely foundational. It really challenges that conventional economic thinking, doesn't it? Makes you rethink where the very first efforts, the first resources really need to go.
Okay, let's get into it then. So Antonio Andrade Fernandes Bernardo, he sees this pattern in how people talk about Angola's development, almost like a blind spot. He thinks there's this basic essential factor that's just been consistently missed. If it's so fundamental, why does he think it's been overlooked? What is this missing piece?
Well, his core idea is pretty direct. And once you hear it, it almost feels obvious, but the implications are huge. He argues that real socioeconomic development, he's careful here, defining it as the general population getting genuine access to the country's wealth. Material stuff, immaterial goods, resources, opportunities, the whole picture.
Yeah.
That this kind of development fundamentally depends on what he calls PO, a DHEC, CISETE. It's an acronym for the Portuguese. Posibilidade permanente de circulação em segurança por todo o território do Estado.
Okay, quite a mouthful. What's the simpler version?
Right. Basically, it translates to the permanent possibility of safe, rapid, and comfortable movement throughout the entire country. And the key words there are permanent and entire. He stresses this means all the time, for everyone. Not just for elites, not just certain times of the year, but universally, consistently.
Safe, rapid, comfortable movement everywhere. Always. And what he finds striking, maybe a bit naive, is how many past development plans in Angola sort of miss this. He points out that they often didn't prioritize or sometimes didn't even really include building or fixing roads on a large scale, which, seems like the obvious backbone for this POPECISETE concept, the safe circulation.
Yeah, it wasn't just about building a road here or there. It was about the whole network, ensuring it actually covered the territory and functioned reliably. That was often missing from the big plans.
And there's a really powerful quote in the sources that kind of brings this home from the ground level. It's from Maria da Conceição Neto's work on the Huambo region. She quotes Angolan farmers saying, and I'll translate, "Queremos as estradas en condições y o resto vai aparecer," which means, we want the roads in good condition and the rest will appear.
Simple but profound.
Exactly. The rest meaning, production coming back, markets opening up, suppliers returning, everything. It's such a clear statement from people who live it, and it really contrasts with some of the maybe more abstract official planning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you connect that to the bigger historical picture, which the author does, he points out that throughout history, going way back to antiquity right up to modern times, nations that really built economic and political power, they consistently built, maintained, and crucially controlled strong communication routes.
Like the Romans.
Exactly like the Romans. Think about those incredible road networks. They weren't just for moving soldiers around. They were the arteries for trade, for spreading ideas, for administration, for connecting diverse people. They allowed goods, people, solutions to move across huge areas, integrating the empire economically, culturally. It's a timeless lesson, really, about how vital that mobility infrastructure is for everything a state wants to achieve. It's not just an Angolan thing. It's a pattern worldwide.
So it's about more than just moving goods.
Way more. And that connects directly to the philosophical basis of his argument. He argues that transforming any kind of resource, whether it's something physical like minerals or land, or something human like skills or knowledge, it fundamentally requires physical contact, circulation. You can't turn raw materials into products if you can't get them to a factory. You can't share knowledge if teachers or information can't reach people. It's that simple.
Right.
And if that circulation, trade, learning, collaboration, even things like charity work, only happens in isolated pockets, then what you get is economic growth maybe, but it's
Mhm.
concentrated in those pockets. It's not true development that lifts the whole population.
And that creates bigger gaps between regions.
Precisely. It can worsen regional disparities, creating an uneven, unstable country. Development, as he defines it, needs that widespread and, importantly, deseasonal.
Yeah.
Eat all season, year-round. That possibility of circulation has to be there regardless of the weather. Think about places like Angola, where rainy seasons can literally cut off whole regions for months.
Hmm.
That stops everything: trade, healthcare, school. So achieving this reliable, all-season circulation isn't just convenient. It's essential for bringing everyone into the national economy and society.
Okay, so with that historical and philosophical background, let's look at Angola's path. The author talks about a perda de noção, a loss of notion or understanding. What happened?
Well, he explains that in the first decade or so after independence, there was this kind of collective gut understanding about linking the countryside to the cities. It was seen as vital for agriculture, for feeding people in urban areas, for industry. He even notes it showed up in school books back then, this idea of connecting the farm and the factory, the need for internal links.
So there was an awareness initially.
Yes, but then things shifted. Quite dramatically, he argues, especially after April 4th, 1992, when the Civil War ended. Suddenly there was this huge influx of oil money. But instead of investing it heavily in building up domestic production and the infrastructure needed for it, a lot of it went into just importing things on a massive scale.
Ah, okay, so why build it if you can just buy it from somewhere else?
Kind of. It made developing internal production, setting up those complex field-to-city supply chains, seem, well, slow. Maybe old-fashioned, even impractical, compared to just buying finished goods abroad.
And that had consequences.
Big ones.
Mm.
The sources say it effectively blinded the country to its own huge internal potential. The focus shifted outwards, towards imports, which, often benefits only a small segment of the population and creates this dependency, undermining the whole idea of developing internal circulation and production.
And does that thinking still persist, even now when there's talk about diversifying the economy away from oil? The author mentions the current Minister of Finance, Vera Daves de Sousa Santos, talking about roads.
Right, but he suggests that even when officials mention roads now, the perspective is often quite narrow, or minimalist, as he puts it. It tends to focus mainly on roads for agricultural outflow, just getting the produce out from the farms to the market.
Which is important, of course, but it sounds like it's missing the bigger picture.
That's exactly his point. It's like seeing roads only for moving goods after they're produced.
Like seeing a river just as a way to float boats downstream, not for how it nourishes everything around it.
That's a great analogy.
Hmm.
He argues roads are fundamental before production even starts. Think about setting up any kind of business outside the main cities. You need to get building materials there, machinery, skilled workers, basic services for those workers. Without decent roads, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
So it enables production in the first place.
Absolutely. And their impact is genuinely transversal. It cuts across everything.
Mhm.
Roads are crucial for fair healthcare access, getting doctors and supplies in, getting patients out, for kids getting to school, especially in rural areas, for emergency services. Imagine trying to respond to a disaster or a security incident without reliable routes.
You can't.
Exactly. They're needed for basic social services to reach communities, for setting up industries where they make sense strategically, not just where it's easiest logistically, and maybe most fundamentally, for holding the country together, national unity, cultural exchange, connecting diverse regions. It really is a foundational layer for almost everything else.
Wow. Okay, so given how absolutely central this is, the author brings in this concept of the supreme interest of the state. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure, he makes a distinction. There's the immediate supreme interest, which is like the ultimate goal, the whole purpose of the state existing,
Yeah.
which he defines as satisfying human needs for everyone now and in the future, not just certain groups at a certain time.
Okay, the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And the other part.
The immediate supreme interest. This is the means to achieve that ultimate goal, the essential stepping stone, if you like.
Right, and I think I see where this is going.
Exactly. He connects these ideas brilliantly. He argues that PO.PE, this permanent, safe circulation, is the immediate supreme interest of the state. It's not the end goal itself, but it's the absolute essential enabler. It's the primary way you foster production, spread opportunities, and give the general population real access to the country's wealth and services.
So by ensuring PO.PECICSETE, the state can actually fulfill its ultimate purpose, its immediate supreme interest.
Precisely. It's the critical bridge. Without securing that immediate interest, the immediate ultimate interest remains out of reach, for huge parts of the population.
That really elevates the importance of roads and circulation, doesn't it? From just logistics to a core state function.
It does. And to make sure this crucial immediate supreme interest isn't forgotten or pushed aside again,
Mm.
the author proposes something pretty bold, maybe even radical,
Okay.
a constitutional amendment. He suggests putting a clausula constitutional petre,
Which means?
a constitutional bedrock clause,
Mm.
something really fundamental and hard to change. And this clause would be imposed on the executive power, the government,
Mandating what?
mandating that they must implement continuous, effective measures to increase and improve PO.PECE, to actively enhance the quality, reach, efficiency of these circulation services and infrastructure.
And presumably preventing them from doing things that harm it.
Yes, exactly. It would also expressly prohibit any actions that reduce the quality, effectiveness, or efficiency of these critical networks.
Wow. So literally writing the importance of roads and safe movement into the Constitution as a core government obligation.
That's the proposal. It's a powerful statement, isn't it? Embedding this foundational need at the highest legal level. It's basically saying that without this, other rights and opportunities just don't materialize for many people.
Yeah, you can imagine the ripple effects of that. It would have to change how budgets are made, how policies are planned.
Completely. It forces a long-term view.
Mm.
Beyond just, election cycles or swings in oil prices, it would demand constant investment, not just building, but maintenance, expansion, security for these networks. It's definitely ambitious, but it really reflects his deep conviction that the state's legitimacy, its ability to actually serve its people, rests on this very basic capability. And that it's just too important to be left shifting political winds or economic trends. It's an attempt to lock in a fundamental truth.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the insight from Antonio Andrade Fernandes Bernardo is incredibly powerful and maybe deceptively simple. That real national development, the kind that actually reaches ordinary people across the whole country, is tied directly, inextricably, to something as basic as being able to move around safely and reliably.
Yeah.
It's a huge reminder that sometimes the biggest levers for change are the ones we might overlook or just assume are handled, not giving them that foundational status they deserve.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And it raises a broader question for all of us, really, no matter where we live. If a country's development, people's well-being, hinges so strongly on something as tangible as roads and safe movement, what other sine qua non conditions? What other absolute essentials might we be missing in other areas, in education and health and technology? And maybe more importantly, how do we build that collective awareness, that shared understanding about what truly needs to come first to unlock progress for everyone?
Recognizing those often invisible foundations.
Exactly. The things that make everything else possible.
A really profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into what might just be the most fundamental building block of national development. We hope it's given you something important to consider.